It started with the kind of morning that felt ordinary. Cool breeze, the smell of warm bread from the corner bakery, the faint hum of life beginning to stir in a small town that always took its time. I wasn't expecting anything different. I was simply passing through a quiet day, like many before it, until a soft voice behind me said, "Excuse me, you dropped this." A book I hadn't realized had slipped from my bag. I turned, met eyes that didn't demand anything, just offered something I hadn't felt in a long while: presence. We spoke only briefly. Thank you. A smile. A comment about the title. I walked away thinking that was it, but I found myself circling back to that moment again and again throughout the day. Not because of what was said, but because of how I felt. Safe. Noticed. Like maybe something had shifted quietly beneath the surface. I told myself not to overthink it. People meet all the time. Still, I visited the same place the next day, and the day after, until I saw them again, this time reading that same book on the bench outside. We talked longer about things people don't usually share early on, about favorite childhood memories, the comfort of silence, the odd feeling of being seen even when you're not trying to be. There was no pressure to impress, no games to play, just a gentle rhythm, like we'd both been waiting to exhale for years and could finally do it now. That ease was rare, so I leaned into it. There's something about true connection. It doesn't shout. It doesn't flash. It hums quietly and invites you to listen. That's what it was with them. Time stopped meaning much. We started seeing each other without needing a reason. Coffee turned into long walks. Conversations stretched into hours that never felt long enough. I noticed the way their laugh curved into the spaces between my thoughts, the way their presence felt like home in a world that so often felt loud and demanding. One evening, they brought me a little gift, a bookmark with a quote scribbled in pen. Sometimes we don't meet people by accident. Sometimes they are the answer to a quiet prayer we didn't even know we whispered. I didn't say anything, just smiled. But inside, I knew something was unfolding, something honest and alive. I didn't fall in love like the movies. There were no fireworks or dramatic music. It was quieter than that, more like recognizing a familiar scent in a place you've never been. It was real, grounded, and entirely unexpected. Looking back, I couldn't tell you the exact moment. It changed from two people talking to two souls beginning to blend. Maybe it was when they remembered how I took my coffee, or when I found myself missing them even when they were sitting right next to me. All I know is that first moment, the book, the smile, the quiet, wasn't the beginning of a story I was writing. It was the beginning of one that was writing me. Love didn't arrive all at once. It unfolded, slowly, honestly, one small moment at a time. A shared silence on a quiet street, a knowing glance after a joke, only we found funny. There was no need to impress, just the comfort of being fully seen and still wanted. That kind of thing doesn't shout. It settles in like warmth after a long winter. We began learning each other without trying. I noticed how they avoided eye contact when they were nervous, how they hummed without realizing when reading. They picked up on my habits too, the way I tapped my thumb when thinking or always sat facing the door. These weren't grand discoveries, just pieces falling into place. What surprised me wasn't how quickly we connected, but how natural it felt. Like we weren't building something new, just uncovering what was already there. It wasn't perfect. We didn't always agree. But even the disagreements had softness. We never raised voices. We listened, not just to words, but to what was underneath them. I realized real love doesn't avoid the hard things. It meets them gently. It says, "I'm here even when it's messy." That kind of presence is rare. We both knew it. We didn't speak about the future. We just kept showing up for each other in the present. One afternoon, something shifted. I saw them anxious, hands trembling slightly, eyes distant. Something had shaken them, though they wouldn't say what. We sat in silence until I reached over, placed my hand over theirs, and whispered, "Son, take it easy." They looked up, surprised by the calm in my voice. But I meant it, and not just for them. For myself, too. It was the first time I truly understood that love isn't about fixing someone. It's about sitting beside them when they break and staying there until they breathe again. After that, things deepened. We began to share parts of ourselves we hadn't with anyone else, the fears we kept buried, the dreams we rarely admitted out loud. There was no judgment, only acceptance. I began to feel more like myself than I had in years. Love didn't change me. It reminded me who I was before the world taught me to be guarded. They once said, "I never thought I'd feel this kind of peace with someone." I understood, because I felt it too. Not excitement, not infatuation, peace. The kind that doesn't demand attention, but makes you feel safe enough to be still. We laughed more. We rested more. Even the quiet felt full. I stopped wondering where this was going because for the first time, I wasn't in a rush to get anywhere. I was exactly where I wanted to be. It's strange how quickly someone can become your safe place. Not through dramatic declarations, but through steady presence, through remembering the little things, through the simple, sacred choice to stay. And every day, without saying it out loud, that's what we did. We stayed. We were steady, but life wasn't. It came in quietly at first, pressures neither of us expected. Deadlines, missed calls, growing silence. Not anger, just distance. Subtle, like a door slowly closing without a sound. We kept telling ourselves it was just a phase, that we were just busy. But there's a difference between being busy and being apart, and we both felt it. They started talking about a job in another city, a great opportunity, one they'd earned. I nodded, said all the right things. I was proud, but inside, something tightened. I didn't say don't go. They didn't ask me to follow. It was a moment where love had to decide if it would stretch or snap. We didn't fight. That almost made it worse. It felt like drifting, not breaking, like losing someone in a crowd. You can still see them, but they're moving further away with every step, and you don't know if they'll turn back. We still met, still talked, but the spark had quieted. Everything felt careful, like we were both afraid of breaking something we hadn't named. One evening, I sat alone replaying our conversations. Not what was said, but what was missing. We used to speak without planning. Now, even silence felt like effort. I realized how fragile love becomes when it's taken for granted. It doesn't leave in anger. It fades in the absence of intention. I wanted to fix it, but I didn't know how to reach someone who seemed already halfway gone. A letter arrived the next day. Not digital. Handwritten. From them. Just a few lines. "I miss us, but I don't know if you still feel the same." That line stayed with me. I read it again and again. Not because of the question, but because I hadn't realized they were waiting for a sign from me too. I wrote back. No dramatic promises. Just honesty. I told them I still felt everything, but I was scared. That I didn't know what came next, but I didn't want to face it without them. That love, for me, had always meant staying even when it got uncomfortable. They didn't reply immediately. Days passed. The silence this time felt different, like holding your breath underwater, waiting for a surface you can't see. I kept showing up anyway, calling, texting. No pressure, just presence. A reminder, I hadn't left. When they finally called, it wasn't emotional. It was steady, clear. They said they needed time to figure out if what we had was worth the fight. I understood. Love isn't about begging someone to stay. It's about being someone worth returning to. That night, I stopped hoping for things to go back to how they were. I started hoping we'd build something new, stronger. Not because we never broke, but because we decided we were worth the effort. That kind of love doesn't come easy. But when it's real, it's resilient, even when tested. Especially then. Time passed, the kind that doesn't ask for permission. Weeks blurred into months. We spoke less, but I never stopped thinking about them. Not with longing, but with quiet hope. I didn't chase. I didn't beg. I simply lived, carrying them in the small moments. Their voice in a song. Their laugh in a stranger's smile. I missed them, but I also found myself again. The version of me that could stand alone, but still choose love if it returned. Something had changed. Not just in them. In me. I wasn't waiting anymore. I was preparing. For whatever came. Whether it was goodbye or a new beginning. I learned that love, real love, doesn't leave you bitter. It teaches you. It sharpens your patience. It softens your pride. And in that space of quiet healing, something unexpected happened. They came back, not with grand words, just presence, just eyes that said, "I've grown too." We didn't need to unpack every moment we'd missed. We didn't go over what went wrong. We simply met each other where we were, with more grace, more understanding, more willingness to try. There was no rush, no pressure, just a mutual choice to start again. This time, with open hands instead of clenched fists. We talked about everything we hadn't before. The fear, the doubts, the moments we almost gave up. And, strangely, those conversations brought us closer than any romantic gesture ever had. It turned out that space hadn't broken us. It had refined us. We'd come back with a deeper respect, a quiet reverence for what it means to stay, to choose each other not because it's easy, but because we're willing. That kind of love doesn't sparkle. It doesn't scream. It holds steady even when the world tries to pull it apart. We laughed more this time, not because everything was perfect, but because we'd stopped expecting it to be. We embraced the cracks, the awkward pauses, the learning curves. That's where the magic was, not in never hurting, but in always healing together. One morning, they turned to me and said, I think we needed the storm. I nodded, because I knew exactly what they meant. We needed to break, not to fall apart, but to fall deeper, to understand that love is not just presence, but persistence, not just emotion, but endurance. I once thought love was about never letting go. Now I know it's about letting go of control and still choosing each other when everything else says walk away. We did that, not perfectly, but honestly. And now every day feels different. Not brighter, not easier, just real. We still stumble, but we reach. We still pause, but we return. That's our love story, not defined by a beginning or an end, but by every choice in between. We didn't find something flawless. We found something true, something worth the silence, the space, the storm. And every time I look at them, I know this is what it means to love and be loved, fully, quietly, and for real,